Hi everyone, and welcome back to another lawnfawn video. This is Mindy Egan. In today's video, I'm going to be creating a magic iris card using the new I Love Eucalyptus flip-flop and the original I Love Eucalyptus stamp sets. First, I want to show you some of the supplies I'm using. This is the original I Love Eucalyptus stamp set, and then I also have here the flip-flop version that I'll be using. I have a bug deal. I'll be using the branches and the leaves. I have Many Thanks stamp set and the coordinating die, so I'm using the thanks and a coordinating sentiment. I have the hillside border die, the original magic iris piece, and then I'm also going to use the magic iris add-on, which is just this front cover so I can create an entire scene. Some of the inks that I'll be using for my background are chipped sapphire, blueprint sketch, cracked pistachio, black soot, vintage photo, and walnut stain distress oxide ink, and I also have black licorice and jet black ink from Lawnfawn. The cardstock for my card today will include kraft cardstock, fog cardstock for my base. I have mermaid cardstock and also the white 80-pound cardstock from Lawnfawn. I'm going to start off by doing some quick Copic coloring. I'm only going to show coloring of the one of the koalas and one of the branches to save a little bit of time, and I will have all of the colors that I'm using listed at the top of the screen. These are all stamped on the 80-pound white cardstock in the jet black ink. I started with C6 as my darkest color and then blending out with C4, C3, and C2. I really want the main color of the image to be that light color, the C2. So I'm using the C6 just on the very outer edge where I want my darkest area to be, and then just blending that out. And I'll use that same color combination on my flip-flop image, but the darkest side of the koala will be on the right-hand side for that other image. For my ears, I have R22 and R20. For the branch, I'm going to be using E37, 35, 33, and 31. And I just picked one of the sides of the branch to add my darkest color to and blending out with the remaining colors. And I wanted to add a little bit of texture to these trees. So I'm going to come back in with my E37 and just add flicks of color to make it look like tree bark. So just adding little flicks here and there with the tip of my marker. For my leaves, I'm going to use G17, which is going to be a line of color at the bottom of the leaf and then in the middle of the leaf too, and I'll blend that out with a YG06 and YG01. I really like the YG01 because it's such a bright, fun color. Then I can take the coordinating dies, line them up over the images, and run those through my die cut machine, and I'm going to work on the rest of my card. I'm starting with a piece of mermaid cardstock, and I have my cracked pistachio ink here. Now this is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and I'm going to bring in that add-on and just line this up to get an idea about where the center of the card is going to be. And I'm going to add just a little smush of ink to the center there because I'll be blending that out anyway. And then just taking a foam applicator, I'm going to add a circle of color. That's going to be where the center of my magic iris is going to be. Then I'm going to bring in blueprint sketch. And I'm going to add that all around the edges, blending into that cracked pistachio. And I want this to be kind of a dramatic night sky. So I will bring in the chipped sapphire and go around the outer edges of that as well. And I do go back and forth kind of off screen, just blending between the colors to help smooth out that transition. And to add a little bit more kind of dramatic look to this, I'm going to bring in a hint of black soot and just really go around the very, very outer edge of that. So once this is all ink blended, I'm going to bring in that magic iris add-on piece, and I'm going to line this up over the front of my cardstock. And when I die cut this out, I want to make sure to also save that center piece. I'm going to place that back in for my sentiment later on. To add some stars to my night sky, I took some white paint, mixed it with a little bit of water, and I'm just picking that up with a paintbrush and flicking that all over my background. I wanted to add a little bit of sparkle too, so I'm going to bring in a little bit of the liquid stardust and flick that onto my background, and then I'll set this off on the side to dry and work on the interactive portion of the card. I have all of my main pieces cut from mermaid cardstock, so I have 3 circles here. I also have the 3 sausage-shaped pieces, and I have my tab. Then I also have 3 stabilizer pieces, all cut from mermaid cardstock. I'm going to take the flux capacitor piece and one of the circles, line that up in the center of the circle, and run this through the die cut machine. And this is going to create those notches where we can put our hot dog pieces in. So they just slide into those notches, and I'm going to kind of hold it in place, just making sure that it stays kind of on track there. And on these sausage-shaped pieces are these little X's that are kind of embedded into the cardstock. And I'm taking some micro glue dots and adding it right to the center of those X's. I want to make sure that all of my pieces stay on track, so I'm just going to adjust my sausage pieces a little bit, make sure that they're right on line with that circle on our base. Then taking another circle, and I'm going to put this right on top, and it's going to be held in place with those glue dots. Then I can flip this over, and there are little etched markings on the back of this, and I'm going to add a line of tape runner on each of those. Then I'll take that stabilizer piece, and I'm going to take kind of that shape and line it up with the center of the back of this magic iris piece and push down so that it adheres to that tape runner that I applied. Then I'll flip this back over to the front, and I have my tab here that I added a little bit of adhesive to. I lined the edge of that curved tab with the center of my circle and created a little V next to one of the stabilizer pieces. Then I can add some tape runner to each of those tabs, bring in my last circle piece, add it on top, and then I can close those tabs over that circle piece. So when I'm lining this up, I'm not going all the way to the center. I'm just coming out ever so slightly off of it because this is going to help our magic iris move. If you fold them in too tight, your magic iris or your interactive portion won't work. So then I always like to give this kind of a test run. So I'm going to start moving that, make sure that everything works, it closes really nice, and I'm ready to go. Now I can work on decorating the front of my card. So I have some kraft cardstock here that I'm creating a little stitched hill with, and I'll actually cut two of these because I'm going to have kind of a layered hillside going on. So once I run this through the machine and I have both of my pieces, I am going to ink blend on some vintage photo, and I'm starting at the bottom, and I'm going to leave that kraft color at the very top. Then I have my second piece here. I'm bringing in that vintage photo. Now that first one, I didn't need to do much more to it because it's going to get covered up. But the bottom of that smaller piece, I did add a little bit of walnut stain. And I also smushed that onto my craft mat, added some water, and flicked that onto my background, just kind of add a little more interest to it. And I also took a little bit more of that white paint, added some water to that, and flicked that onto the background as well. Now I'm going to set this off on the side to dry for just a minute or two so that I don't smear any of my ink. And once it is dry, I can take it to the front of my card and start attaching it. I'm just going to use a tape runner that I added to the bottom of my cover piece and also to that hillside. And I know I have a little bit overhanging, so I'm going to trim this off while it's still just a single layer. It gets tougher to cut when you have a couple layers layered on top there. So this is my last bottom piece. And I can trim off that excess. And before I go too much further, I need to work on a sentiment. I always seem to forget this part till the end. So I am using that Many Thanks stamp set. I'm stamping this one. There's a couple varieties on this stamp set. So I stamped that in the black licorice ink. And then that centerpiece I saved, I'm stamping this "You Are Qualified for a Hug" sentiment in the black licorice ink right on top of that. I used the coordinating die to cut out that larger thanks, so I lined that up to the front of my card so I know where my smaller sentiment's going to go. Once I know that that is straight, I'm going to prep this cardstock with an anti-static powder tool. I'll ink up my sentiment in the embossing ink, and then I can stamp that down on the front of my card. I'm going to sprinkle on some silver embossing powder. You could use silver, white, or even just stamp it in plain black ink. Once I sprinkle off any of that excess powder, I can melt this with my heat gun. And what I always like to do is take a Swiffer cloth and just buff over so that it removes any of that excess powder that was on top. Now I took the front piece and I lined that up about where it's going to go on my fog cardstock base. And I'm taking my sentiment I stamped and lining that up right in the center. And then I can remove this cover piece. I want to make sure that that is exactly placed before I attach my magic iris piece. Now I'm taking that tab, and I did die cut this arrow from some ink blended cardstock, added that to that tab, and I'm trimming off the excess of this tab. I can take my interactive piece and line this up behind my cover, and I want to make sure that my tab is flush with the edge of the front of my card. Then I can take a tape runner. I'm just adding tape all over the front of this. The front is not the moving part. It's the back where the pieces slide. So you want to make sure that you're not taping anything down. Once my edges are flush, I can push down and my interactive piece is attached to my cover. So everything is still moving. I didn't tape anything shut. And now I'm going to work on the decorating. I'm doing this before I attach to my card base in case I need to trim any excess off. So I have my branches here that I attached that cute little koala to. He's kind of hanging on to it. And then I can attach that to the front of the card just using a tape runner. And I want to make sure I'm not adding any tape to pieces that might overhang the center of my magic iris. I don't want to tape that shut. Then just using a little bit of liquid glue, I'm adding in a few of the leaves on the branch to kind of fill in that area. So I have my koala kind of sitting on some leaves. I have my second one here that I'm adding to that branch. And then I can tuck in my branch there into my stitched hillside, add a little bit of that tape runner, and kind of have it hanging over the magic iris piece. And then once again, just filling in any areas with the leaves. So after I have kind of everything filled in and I'm confident nothing has glued my magic iris shut, I'm going to bring in that thanks sentiment and I'm going to add some liquid glue to the back of it and attach that right above that small sentiment that I had heat embossed for all you do. So I have thanks for all you do. You are qualified for a hug. Now on the back of my magic iris piece, I'm going to take some tape runner and I'm going to add it kind of over those areas where those stabilizer pieces are. You don't want to put it on the other part, in between those stabilizer pieces, or your magic iris won't work. Then I just filled in the rest of the card front with some foam squares to kind of even out that balance. And then I can attach this to the front of the card. You want to make sure it's open so you can see that you are centered over that sentiment that you stamped. So now we can give this a test. Everything is working. So we can just pull that lever at the top and it's going to open up to show that sentiment in the inside. You are qualified for a hug. I totally love these flip-flop images. I think they are great for seam building and it saves me so much time to be able to just stamp them out and start instead of me trying to do the technique of flipping the image. So this works out a lot better. I hope you enjoyed today's interactive card using the magic iris. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I'll see you again soon.